So while Coach Harbaugh wants his players to get to the ball, we want to get to Anthony Bellino. You see him every morning right here on BCSN as part of the X's and Bros show. Anthony, what's Michigan's record again?
Well, you know what I like to say, Mark, about being undefeated. You can't get to 8-0 if you don't start off 7-0, and that's where the Wolverines sit this weekend with a little backyard brawl getting ready to happen.
That's right. It is Michigan and Michigan State under the lights. Everybody's excited about it, but perhaps the Ann Arbor Police Department. It's the state championship on the line because clearly Central Michigan, Western Michigan, and Northern Michigan and Eastern Michigan don't matter. This discussion is about Michigan and Michigan State, two teams that, in offensive lineman Ryan Hayes' words, don't like each other. It's a dogfight whenever they meet.
You know what? It really is, and it's good to see that the rivalry is as strong as it has been. Now, I noticed you went around about and kind of went to some other teams across the state. You got no love for Grand Valley, had no love for Ferris State. Come on, it's number 1 and number 7 in the Division II poll, both there representing the great state of Michigan. But we'll get back to this one. Yeah, this is a rivalry game that has really taken sort of a new step, right? And I think that last year, all of that focus, all of that angst for Michigan was built up towards Ohio State. And this is one of the things that I actually really like about the fact that both teams were on the bye, right? It would have been great for Michigan State to go play like Purdue or somebody this week. But with both teams on the bye, it's very much equal. And I think with it being a rivalry game, it benefits both teams, but especially Michigan, because now you have 2 weeks to focus on a team that you have not beat yet with their current head coach in Mel Tucker. This is a very, very important game for the state bragging rights. You know, they have that old saying, the best players in Michigan go to Michigan, right? Well, Mel Tucker's done very, very well in the transfer portal. He's done very good on the recruiting trail. The class is coming in. You know, a lot of hype surrounding them. So this one is not just for the bragging rights for the fan bases, but this sends a message, a shot across the bow. There's been some surveys that have been done in the state of Michigan about fanhood, right? And I think if you went back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was heavy, maybe a 70-30 split. Everybody leaning towards the maize and blue. You start to get that run of Michigan State success. And guess what? Those graduates, those alums, they start to become family men, right? And mothers and fathers, and they are taking their alumni-ness and they're breeding that into small children who are then taking their Michigan State pencils and folders to school, convincing their friends to defect. We don't need that, Mark. That's not what we need at all. This is huge. This is big for the alumni. It's big for the kids. It's big for recruiting. And it's big for the state of Michigan. It's big for Ann Arbor PD. Everyone's going to be very well behaved, though. And I think the other part about this is Michigan State's record takes a little bit of steam, takes a little gas out of it. If both teams were 7-0, bring out the tanks, get the riot gear out. But Michigan State has struggled this year, so therefore that benefits the police department.
Now, Jim Harbaugh said you can take that 3-4 record and throw it out the window, that they've got a very good quarterback in Peyton Thorne, that they've got good wide receivers, they got opportunistic defenses. Is that just coach speak?
I mean, what do they call it? Blowing smoke. I mean, if he was blowing smoke, that was like Snoop Dogg up there blowing smoke. I mean, look, he knows he's walking the line. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Respect your opponent. That's the first thing you can do. You cannot overlook anybody. They're going to bring their best shot. So everything that they had in those 3 wins, they are going to throw at you, and you better pray to God that they don't bring any of that 4-loss mess to Ann Arbor on Saturday. One thing I would like to do is go back in time, though. Where has Mel Tucker and Michigan State, where have they had success schematically against the Michigan Wolverines? One of those areas on offense is the passing game, right? And Peyton Thorne picking up some momentum in their most recent contest, right? He and Naylor, Coleman, like the guys are starting to come together a little bit. They're starting to figure some things out in the pass game. The run game, Berger has been okay, hasn't been great. Not necessarily concerned. I don't think their offensive line is as good, but where Michigan State has beat Michigan schematically has been in pace. They've been able to get to the line of scrimmage, and that has really affected Michigan on the defensive side of the football. They've struggled to get up to the line of scrimmage as quick and be able to match them. If Michigan State isn't going to sub, Michigan's not going to have time to do that. That's one area that I would look to if I was scouting Michigan. Hey, how are we doing so far this year when teams want to get in to their 4-minute or 2-minute offense, right? Because that's really the only look you have at anybody running any sort of a hurry up against them. And how do we defend that? I thought Maryland did a little bit of that in the first half when they visited Ann Arbor, and that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me with the Terrapins. It's like, hey, they're pushing the pace. They're starting to press a little bit. That's an area we struggled with Michigan State. That's an area that we want to look at. If Ohio State wants to bring that to the table, it's an area of concern because they've been not very good at defending that in years past.
You said Jim Harbaugh showing respect for the current opponent, the future opponent, but Jim Harbaugh not a lot of respect for the former opponent as James Franklin's complaints about the tunnel at Michigan lands on deaf ears.
Well, look, there's one tunnel to get onto the field. You walk down it. I walk down it. Everybody at BCSN walks down it. All our camera people that are working there Saturdays, everybody walks down the same tunnel. One way in, one way out. Penn State, you're closest to the tunnel. Get off the field. Get off the field. Get in your locker room. Why are you trying to stop the Michigan team from making it into their own locker room? Because you felt good about where you were at halftime, considering the fact you had one play that your quarterback scrambled, looked like a gazelle running down the field for 62 yards, and you had a pick six on a double doink. That's why you guys feel good, only to get 418 rushing yards against your defense. Last time I checked, not very good. Look, the peanut butter sandwiches were being thrown around. I look, it's absolute chaos. Maybe that's an area that we want to look at for this week from a game op standpoint. Hey, how do we get the visiting team up the tunnel at halftime as expeditiously as possible? Do they try to hold Michigan back at midfield? Not in the clocks don't start until the refs are off the field. So the refs should be the last people off the field. Give everybody a little bit more time. Let's get everybody up the tunnel. We don't need any of this nonsense. James Franklin complaining about it is just ridiculous to me. And to be honest with you, I'm glad Coach Harbaugh threw some shots. I'm glad that he decided he was going to he wasn't going to lay up and he was going to hit driver on a reachable par four. You know what? You got the big stick, swing it.
Bigger fish to fry, in Jim Harbaugh's words. In other news coming out of Monday's press conference, bad news, tight end Eric All. He is done for the season after undergoing surgery. He's missed the last couple of games. Now, we heard all preseason how good the tight ends were, both Eric All and Luke Schoonover. Schoonover has been admirably performing in the absence of Eric All. Now it'll be up to Luke Schoonover to take over that position on his own.
Yeah, Big Schoon. I mean, he's been doing a fantastic job. Look, and I don't think you're necessarily going to replace Eric All's production at that position, but with Max Bredesen and Luke Schoonmaker, both of those guys have been doing a very good job in the multiple tight end looks. I thought that J.J. McCarthy's developed a really nice chemistry and relationship with Schoon. The fans love him as well. He's been dependable. He's very good in the blocking game, right? When it comes down to trying to rush the football, he's very good there as well. Michigan is a team that wants to be able to use their tight ends. They have a couple available. I think between Schoonmaker and Bredesen, it gives you a solid, 2-3 punch, but it definitely hurts not having Eric All, who would be more or less, I would consider Eric All more of the Travis Kelce, where Luke Schoonmaker is probably, maybe along the lines a little bit more TJ Hockenson, right? Not as much flash, still athletic enough to make the catches that he needs to make, but much better in the run blocking game. So it does take him back one weapon offensively. It's unfortunate for Eric All, especially with the momentum that this season this Wolverines team has, but I have full confidence in Luke Schoonmaker. He's been doing it all season. He's got 23 catches already on the year. That's second most out of any receiver on the team. The chemistry is there. They know where to find each other. He's good in the run game. I'm good with Schoon.
Interestingly, now you lose Eric All for the rest of the season. He is one of your captains. Cade McNamara, another one of your captains. He's been hurt for quite some time now. So this Michigan team down two captains, but the culture has been so strong in Ann Arbor, they haven't missed a beat. Jim Harbaugh saying we bleed blue around here. They're not the Dodgers, not the Vulcans. It's maize and blue blood they are bleeding in Ann Arbor. And that culture was so strong, was able to overcome that loss last year in East Lansing, and that momentum has carried over into 2022.
It really has. And I think that's one of the things that, look at, let's go to a really hyper local level, shall we? Like go to a team like Toledo Central Catholic with Greg Dempsey's crew, right? And sometimes it takes a young fella a couple of years in order to be able to get the football into his hands, right? And you're going to have that when you have a program that has as much depth as this team has. But when you look at like guys like Ronnie Bell and Cornelius Johnson and Andrell Anthony, you go down the list, AJ Henning, they have all these weapons at wide receivers, but none of the numbers that, let's say, the friends down in Columbus have, right? I mean, they've got, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's been knocked up, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, they have wide receivers that at any point can go for 100, 150 yards a game. If a Michigan wide receiver had 150 yards in a game, 95% of us would pass out. He'd have to shovel me off the field. I wouldn't believe it. But that's part of the cultures, because what are we doing? Are you a me guy or are you a we guy? And if you believe that the team is more important, if you believe that at the end of the day, our score over the opposition is more important than my statistics, then you're in a really good place. And that's something that honestly, it's player driven. Like, your coaches can preach it all you want, but if you don't have the buy-in from your upperclassmen, right, from your juniors, your seniors, your captains, that know a guy like Cade McNamara. Look, I know I got pulled. I might have gotten injured, but I know I got pulled. And I know that another guy is here and he's replaced me. But at the end of the day, I'm still a part of this team. I'm still rooting for him. I'm still doing everything I can, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's in a practice. You have to have that buy-in, and that's something that young people look to. They look for leadership, right? Most young people want an example to follow. And if you've got good upperclassmen, if you've been recruiting good people, your culture is going to be in a pretty good place.
And we're seeing that in the defensive line as well.
You said defensive line. It gives me the chills, right? I don't, whether it's Oki, whether it's Mozzie Smith, Mike Morris is one of the largest humans I've ever seen in person. I mean, that defensive line, you got to be able to rotate. You got to have some depth. You got to have buy-in. You got to know that, look, if I got a freshman who's going to come in and play over me, I got to do everything that I have to support him, because he's not going to be out there every play. And if I got to come in and steal some reps from him, then that's what I got to do.
It is a rivalry game. Strange things happen. We know that well on both sides of the ball in this one. So does everything have to go wrong for Michigan to lose and for Michigan State to win, or does Michigan simply need to show up and they'll win?
Well, they got it. Michigan's got to do more than show up. They're going to have to execute. But this is total domination, destruction. Cut this, paste it all over the internet if you have to. This is the game that I have been waiting and over a year for, right here. This is it, because I look back to a couple years ago, Devin Bush at midfield, where Michigan State came out, and it was very rare that they always come out and do their 100-yard walk at home. But instead of being in their suits, they came out with their helmets and their warm-ups on, which I thought was strange, right? Because they never do that. They showed up early. Devin Bush tore up the middle of their field. They held the team to 100 yards, less than 100 yards of offense. I believe the total yards was 94. They need a performance like that. This has to be one to get back the last couple of years, because it wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. It should have left a bad taste in their mouth. This is some unfinished business right here from Michigan. I like them. I like them a lot on Saturday, Mark. I like them big. I like them like 42-7.
Love it when we get the fired up Anthony Bellino from the X's and Bros show. Anthony, thank you for joining us.
Fired up, Mark. You know what it is. It's all go blue over here, Mark. Go blue, 42-7, Michigan with the win.